Rain everywhere. It is going to be a messy slate. Hopefully, we get some postponements, and I'm expecting quite a bit of postponements here tonight. We have that Hurricane Burl just rolled through Texas yesterday, and now it's more so in the Midwest. So the games in like Cincinnati, St. Louis, it's going to get really ugly. But even cities like Chicago are going to be affected, and then you just have some other rain showers going on over in Boston that might creep up tonight. That's really something to monitor throughout the day as well. But we'll talk about all this. We got the sheet pulled up. We got it all color-coded with the weather and the concerns and everything. And then in terms of pitching, I just want to note, first off, it's going to be Lodolo for Cincinnati. I was looking at MLB.com, and they have Lodolo as the starting pitcher. DK doesn't believe so, but I was able to find a news article that said that Lodolo is going to be the starter for Cincinnati here at 8.8K. Solid option. But let's look at this sheet. So a lot of red. These are the games that I'm expecting to postpone. I'm not a meteorologist by any means, but when we're talking about there's not hurricane winds anymore, but there's still lots and lots of rain and steady rain. I don't really expect these games in Chicago and St. Louis to go. Which is unfortunate because I really, really liked Ober in this mid-tier, especially at where his salary is. And then Kansas City, St. Louis, I think that game's also going to get postponed. Not really interested too much in that game from a DFS standpoint, so I guess I'm not too bummed by it. But Cincinnati, they're also going to be flirting around with some of the rain that's going to be going through. So now we got to talk about Lodolo and that rain concern, because I was really interested in Lodolo, even if he had that, quote unquote 85 pitch count. That was my number. I just said 85 pitches. I don't think he's going to get a full send out there coming off the IL, but I also don't think he's going to be pulled at like 60 pitches. So I think 85 to 90 is very justifiable for him. But again, pay attention to the rain there. And then Bayo's got rain concerns, and you can see that Boston and Cincinnati, Minnesota, they're some of my favorite teams. So yeah, it's ugly. Rain's ugly, but let's go through the pitchers and talk about them as we do that. So let's head back over to the salary points. Chris Sale, he was scratched on Monday. He's going here now on Tuesday. Exact same matchup, but for whatever reason, his salary changed. Now he's only 10.4K. He was 10.5. Now he's only 10.4. I said it yesterday. I think he's your must-have that you have in cash. I don't think that's as much of a must-have. On this board, we got 6 more games of way better pitching options that we can go to. So he's not a must, but he's still going to be my top option facing off against Arizona. Blanco, he's got a dream matchup facing off against Miami. Well, I guess I wouldn't say dream matchup. Miami struggles a whole lot more against left-handed pitching, but still, Blanco is an absolutely fine matchup and a fine play here. I don't expect him to really get too much salary, though. I feel if we throw all the rain aside, throw all the rain away, I think that, guys like Ober and Lodolo are going to see a lot more ownership. And even guys like Scherzer, I would expect to get a lot more ownership than Blanco. Scherzer is $700 cheaper. He's definitely, being more stretched out as time goes on. And then the Angels should not be scaring anybody at all. They were able to get 3 runs on Gray last night in the 2nd or 3rd inning. But after that, not really much happened at all. So I do think that Scherzer, with him now being essentially fully stretched out, he's going to be able to go to 95, 100 pitches and be that dominant pitcher that we know. I'm not too concerned about his low strikeout rate at this point. 3 games through, 2 of his games were against Baltimore and San Diego, very low strikeout rate teams. The Angels, much higher strikeout rate, a lot less potent offense. And at 9.3, we get a nice little discount from a guy like Blanco. So it's going to be Sale number 1, Scherzer number 2. And don't sleep on Jake Irvin. Where did this guy come from? I saw the salary price tag on him at 9.1, and I was like, clearly that's not right. I somehow have missed that this guy has been dominant over the past month. Like, it's absolutely incredible what he's been able to do. The majority of the games, he's allowing only one earned run and is coming off of a solo home run. His strikeout rate has climbed up there. The walk rate is remaining steady, as it's been throughout the course of the season. This guy's been absolutely amazing. But still, tough matchup, going and facing off against the Mets. Their bats have cooled down a little bit. There was that stretch like 2 weeks ago where their bats were like the best in baseball. Definitely cooled down a little bit in their matchup against Pittsburgh, but now facing off against Washington. I think they actually just had the series against Washington before that series against Pittsburgh. The Mets did. Yeah, that would make sense because Irvin just played them. So I'm a little hesitant. Irvin, as you can see here, just absolutely dominated the Mets, 37 DK points. I'm not expecting that at all here tonight. I'm also really hesitant about pitchers playing a team a second time in a row. Am I trying to explain that correctly? So Mets obviously have faced multiple pitchers since Irvin, but since they just saw him 5 days ago, I'm going to give advantage to batters. So a little bit of hesitation with there, but I can't ignore the numbers. Like, he's been absolutely phenomenal as of late. And then Gilbert kind of rounding things out there in the high salary tier. Over in the mid tier, if there was no rain concern at all, Ober was going to be my favorite guy in this mid tier, but I really expect this game to just get postponed. Lodolo, again, DK, I think is wrong here. I think it's going to be Lodolo. I saw the news article. But Lodolo, I'm expecting he's coming off the IL, but he just pitched like 2 weeks ago. So I don't think he's going to need a full rehab stint. He's not going to get, fully shut down. I expect him to still go out there and produce 80, 85 pitches and do very well. If we got to monitor the rain on this one, though. It's not as concerning as games in St. Louis and the Chicago, but it is still concerning. Like, if they start this game and then delay happens in third, fourth inning, Lodolo just lost all of his value there. But if it is looking clear and they can get at least like 6 innings in there, then yeah, definitely Lodolo would be my favorite mid-tier option. After him, going to go with Gallen. Gallen's going to be facing off against Atlanta. Atlanta striking out a little bit more, not as potent of an offense as we've come to expect. The only issue with him is that I really don't expect him to be in line for the win. Atlanta isn't as terrifying as they once were, but he's still going to be facing off against Chris Sale. So I do expect that the Arizona bats not really do anything, and it's going to be really tough for Gallen to even get to that win bonus in that regard. Fetty, probably a postponement. Bayo, rain concern. If not, yeah, he's in play with a nice matchup against Oakland. And the Kikuchi, he's just kind of like leftover scraps, and I'm not really super thrilled about. It's just kind of there. Going into the cheap tier, Colin Rea. I don't want to say it like he's my favorite play down here because it comes with limited confidence. But kind of like Jake Irvin, can't argue with what the numbers have been saying here over the past month or so. If he can control the home runs, which have ticked up quite a bit, and you can see like the home runs are really the only issue. Like that is where all the damage is coming from. But if he can limit the home runs, which I think he's going to be able to, in Miller Park there against this Pittsburgh squad, I think he can do well. But again, is there reservation? Is there hesitation with it? Absolutely, because he still allows, hard contact, and he's a pitcher that, historically we kind of pick on in the DFS community. But again, when pitchers are on, they get into the groove, they're hot. They're really hot. And then when they fall apart hard. So, I just like look at Lewis Heel and what he's been doing this season. It was absolutely insanely awesome, overachieving everything. And then he had a bad start, and then just trickled into 3 bad starts, but then he's right back into it. So can Colin Rea continue it? Absolutely. But can he go out there and post another negative 3.4 performance? Yeah, I could totally see that as well. So while he is my favorite option in this low tier, I got a lot of reserves about it. I'm probably going to be sticking up a little bit more so towards the top side with my pitching options, even though it's kind of tough to do that with the salaries and fitting everything in. Everybody else in cheap, just kind of Quintana, he's really just kind of stick up towards the top here, in my opinion. So looking towards the bats, all these leverage leftover stacks, you're just looking at pitchers who I'm expecting to be getting the most ownership. So pitchers like Grisel and Gallen, Lodolo, if that game does happen to be looking good, I expect Lodolo to see quite a bit of ownership. So, I think Colorado could be a nice leverage stack. They're just playing in the small ballpark. Always gives a little boost in that regard. But I think my top team is going to be Boston, facing off against Oakland, facing off against Estes. Estes, he's looked a little better past couple of starts, but still, he's not a pitcher, and this Oakland bullpen is not a bullpen that you should really at all be concerned about. There we go. Hitters. I was like, I could not find my mouse, even though I was hovering right over it. But still, Boston, top bats on the day. If it is looking like it's not going to have a rain impact really at all. Pay attention to the winds as well. Not sure exactly where they're swirling. I probably should have looked that up as I'm kind of talking about it now. Pay attention to the winds and all of that. With storms, rolling in, rolling out, there's always an uptick in winds. So yeah, but regardless, Boston, they would be my favorite stack if, rain wasn't going to be an issue at all. Houston and Seattle are going to be right after them. Seattle facing off against Mazur for San Diego. Let me pull them up here. And we're going to pull up Houston as well, facing off against Rogers. Tucker still on the IL, as always. Alvarez and Rodriguez day-to-day, so pay attention to that. But as you can quickly see, you take those three guys out of the lineup. Between both these teams, only one guy is priced above 4.4K. So they're very affordable, and they kind of, not only do they have like higher implied run totals, according to Vegas, but because their salaries are so cheap, I bumped them up a little bit more in my rankings due to the fact that with the rain that is expected to be happening tonight, salary is going to be extra tight. And that's kind of why the cheap Houston guys and the cheap Seattle guys, while already in a good spot, get elevated a little bit more up the rankings just because there's hesitation. There's not really many options in the cheap tier in terms of rain-free games. Other cheap options, I went with Washington. I know Washington has Abrams, and he's 6.4K at this point. I'm going to take off Seattle here. 6.3K. Thomas, 5.6. After those guys, it gets much, much more affordable. I mean, still half of their lineup is going to be 3.7K and cheaper. So they are still, quote-unquote, a cheap team if you're looking for some one-offs or, two players from this squad to get you some salary savings. Facing off against Quintana, he can allow quite a bit of contact. He's not a pitcher that I'm too nervous about it. But again, I really think Houston and Seattle would be better cheap options over Washington. Okay. But because they're still, quote unquote, like one of my top stacks or top plays on the day, I'm going to put them over here in the top option. So I just wanted to give that some clarity. I still think that Washington, they're not a top 4 or even 5 team or bats team in my opinion, but they provide affordability and they're not in just a brutal matchup against a guy like Sale or Scherzer or Blanco. I almost said Irvin just based on how he's been doing, but I cut short. In terms of GPP, again, this all comes down to rain, paying attention to it, but I really do like the Cincinnati bats. Ellie De La Cruz, the guy is at 45 or 46 stolen bases on the season. Right now, it's video game numbers. I kind of hope he gets to 100. That'd be so fun. But De La Cruz always in play, and then they just have so much upside. And again, kind of like I mentioned in Boston with wind and with storms that come through and whatnot, pay attention to the wind. If it looks like maybe the rain's going to hold off, the wind is still going to be there. And if it's going to be blowing out in that already small ballpark, bump the Cincinnati bats as well. Steer, he's been absolutely on fire and torching it. So really any of them. No concerns at all, especially facing off against Quantrill. So hopefully this is kind of able to at least guide you in the right direction and give you an understanding of how messy this slate can be. But yeah, I really do appreciate you guys continuing to watch these videos. Mega Ruler is going to be back on Wednesday, tomorrow. I think. But pay attention to those notifications. Hit that subscribe button so you can get those notifications when our videos do go live. But I think Mega Roy is going to be back tomorrow for that Wednesday main slate. And I didn't look, but if there is an early slate, we'll try to get both main and early preview videos out for Wednesday. So good luck in your contest. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.